Hi, hello, welcome back to the Strange Orphan podcast. I'm Laura Snell. I will be your tour guide for this evening. I'll be your ship captain for this evening's cruise. Did anyone watch the Oscars on Sunday? I did. It's hard watching an award show after you've totally cut ties from that profession. I've spent the last week really contemplating so I sort of officially closed the door on screenwriting this past week. And I've just had a lot of time to sort of contemplate that whole chapter in Hollywood and what I thought I was going to get, what I did get. There's a lot that's been processed with regards to that career. And then you're also just in this in-between place of well, what now? I have to admit, I do worry if I'm letting go of your old career, even if it wasn't entirely serving you. Okay, great. But there is that sort of frightening feeling of well, wait, but what now? It leaves you in a slightly precarious position of readjustment. I don't think being a storyteller for the past 10 years leaves me in a particularly great, not to mention my biggest concern is I just don't have the energy. I have no ambition anymore. I don't have any ambition anymore. I think that's is that a red flag? I don't give a shit about climbing any sort of I don't want to even see a ladder. I just want to stay here on the ground. I want to howl at the moon. My resume and my overall energy right now would read well, I wouldn't even turn in a resume. I would just turn in my astrological chart. So I'd be start here. What department do you think I'm suited for with a sun in Libra and 6 planets in Scorpio? I don't know where I'm highly employable just in maybe with farm animals. I feel my resume would read like Enya's evening journal. It would be an interpretive resume. It would be a choose your own adventure. I don't know. I'm not built for this world anymore. Me going back into the workforce, that corporate, oh man, that would be sending somebody on a bike to the Indy 500. I don't have it. I don't have it in me. I've lost the capitalist plot. Sorry. I just want to work with tiny abused donkeys or something. I want to give precious things a really nice life. Who do I see about that? Who will hire me for brushing Shetland mini cows? I think that's all I've got in the tank at this point. I think it's really an interesting time in the corporate landscape, but I also think it's interesting to just reflect on how insane my life was. How I was so doggedly ambitious just years ago. I was what you would call a go-getter. Even in high school. This is insane. Even in high school, I was doggedly ambitious. There was a man in our town that was the producer for a talk radio show in Manhattan. And I would he would come into this restaurant I worked at, and I would just talk to him. I was super chatty. And I think he and his wife were if we don't do something, she's going to implode here. And they gave me an internship in New York in high school. I think they saw she needs an outlet. No one's listening to her at home. She's talking to the walls. That was cool. That was very cool of them. But I was I owned a suit in high school for no reason. I was just ready to go. I had like 7 jobs at one time. I was the kid that was like working nonstop. I was so ambitious. My friend Ray was the same. We would have like these jobs over Christmas. Christmas help. I had an overnight job at Abercrombie and Fitch where they would make you like restack the jean. You'd have to rebuild a jean wall every night because everybody would like rip all the pairs of jeans down and try them on, and then we'd have to build them overnight. But you were literally there overnight, and I always did it because you would get paid like a little bit more, like a penny more. But then you drive home at like 7 a.m. and you're like half asleep. And I think I almost crashed my car. My parents like didn't even care. They were like, well, she's working. So I've lost that bone in my body to like work yourself to literal death, like death by falling asleep at the wheel. I've lost that impulse, which is good. But I think a lot of us are in this place of like, I'm just drained and I don't have the energy to pretend that even when like, because there's no promise in holding on to a job that's killing you anymore. Like that capitalist promise is gone. And so I think you go like, okay, what was I doing? And so I look at like all this ambition I had in Hollywood in the last 10 years. And yeah, watching the Oscars, it's really wild to reflect on that chunk of time because I wouldn't say it was necessarily a healthy one, although it was all of my 30s. I was like this is the answer. I think a lot of times I think it's really normal for strange orphans to attribute their career as like to make their career the answer to a cold home or a lack of love at home and be like, well, I'm going to get it from my success in my career. And then you pour everything you've got into something and it becomes that Joseph Campbell quote, you've spent the last 20 years climbing a ladder only to realize it's against the wrong wall. It does not fulfill you the way you thought it would. Still, it's hard. I think regardless of like how tired you are in general, it's hard to acknowledge the ending of a career. And for many of us that have made our career like a second home or even your primary home, like I made Hollywood all I cared about. That was my home base. Creativity, writing was like my life raft. And Hollywood was the life house. And they were gonna get me away from the choppy waters of my upbringing. I think it's really normal for like your career to be more than just a career. It's a promise. It's like it was your identity. You're not just parting with a career, you're parting with a part of like you're parting with who you were for 15 years. You're also parting with your purpose, and you're also having to mourn and let go of what you ascribed that career to be and what you thought it would give you. There was an idea of like the love you thought you would get, and that version of a life that you thought you'd have. You have to have a funeral for that stuff, and that can be really sad. That's the part that's hard, regardless of how chaotic or difficult it was. And for me, Hollywood was quite difficult in more ways than I think I want to admit. I think I sort of took all the ways that I had learned to survive my original home and then just like prescribed them all, like just splattered them all against the wall in Hollywood. And dude, let me tell you, if you don't have some structural upbringing, like if you can't discern, if you don't have the ability of discernment, yikes. It's gonna be a tough time. Stay off Craigslist, dog. All those Craigslist commercial things are all like looking for backup dancers for it's like, no, this isn't gonna end well. And it's like you're auditioning in some guy's garage. It's like, get me the fuck out of here. But yeah, I remember I took my little suitcase of spec scripts out to Los Angeles, and I was gonna make it. I do wish. I don't need ambition. I just wish I had a little bit more of that will to make it no matter what. I think that's the one thing that you start to lose as you get older is like I don't want to say it's apathy, but there's like a delusional, and I had delusion in spades, but there's a sort of delusional edge you have in never failing too hard that you're like, it'll fucking work out. And like you haven't been like beaten up by the gods. You're just so willing to make something happen to counterbalance like, being ignored at home or being like shit on at home. You're like, no, it'll work. I miss a little bit of that like delusional edge. And just like that sort of like oomph of like psychotic, I'll just make it happen because I'm crazy. I had a lot of that and I didn't have to do any drugs for it. And I do miss her a little bit. Now that I'm like talking to the moon every night, I do miss that slightly insane version of myself. I had so many, but she had a lot of insane friends. I lived in a place in Hollywood. Like living in Hollywood is one of the biggest mistakes you can make. I lived in the center of Hollywood, which is like living inside of like a Sims. It's like living in the middle of MySpace. It's just like a insane. Don't do that if you don't. And I took over a sublease when I first moved to LA for a girl who just like packed up and left to go to Dubai to like do bottle service. And she was like, okay, bye. And then when I showed up on the day to take over the apartment, her dog was there. She had just like given me her dog. I was like, what the and I just had this pug. I was like, what do I do? Ma'am, what do I do with your dog? She's like, I don't care. Hollywood is really fascinating. And then if you don't have like the formative imprintations of my biggest thing is like I was like too trusting of people. I was like, I'm gonna make it, and then everyone around me will like help me. And yeah, no, like everyone around you is like vampiric, and if you can't discern like who's trying to take advantage of you and who's like genuine, the far and few between are like genuinely trying to help you. I was just way too trusting. I met this like veteran screenwriter at like a party or a bar or something very early on. And I was like, I'm a screenwriter. And he was like, great, I'll give you notes on your scripts. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. You think you take everybody at face value? Really? And I went to his house in Hollywood Hills. He had this like fucking creepy tree house that he threw like parties at like he was 20. The guy was like 55, bald, obviously. And I get to his house and he's like, well, I'll have lunch and I'll give you notes on your script. I get to his house. My script is like not even printed anywhere. And he's like, yeah, so I was thinking we'll have lunch and then I'll give you some thoughts and then you'll watch me masturbate. How does that sound? I was like, what? I ran out of there. I was like, not for veggie grill, bro. You couldn't even, this is not even a white tablecloth establishment. Gross. No thanks. And it was a few of those until you start to learn. You fall in enough gutters, you're like, I should watch where I'm going. My first agent was like, I think my first 3 agents were all fired for sexual, inappropriate, like sexual harassment. It was kind of fucking ridiculous. Everybody gets pissed about Nepo babies. Like, Nepo babies we're all so jealous of their opportunities. I don't care about that part. What I envy about Nepo babies is that the creeps don't bother them. Like, they're protected by association of lineage. And so they are kind of buffered from the creeps of the world. Whereas the rest of us, rubes, we're like lambs released to the masturbators of Hollywood. Ugh. So maybe it's different now, though. I don't know. I give myself so much credit because I was always because I made it by talent. I was a good girl. I was, and there were so many of those things. Like producers would be like, "I would love to." They call them generals. You want to have a general? Let's have a general. And these were set up through my agents. And then you'd get to the general, and it would be at like 5 p.m. at a bar, and you're like, "Wait, is this a date?" And they're just like testing to see if you'll fuck them. Like, and that's when it pays to be a Nepo baby. I'll be honest. That's when, because you don't pull that shit with someone whose dad is like Eric Roberts or something. And then you think you're free and clear, and then it only gets worse because for me, it got worse when I got successful. It was like the climb was the easy part. Like I'm used to like having to prove myself. When you come from a narcissistic home, you're always willing to prove yourself. You're good at that. Arguing with people that don't want to give you the time of day. What gets hard is when you become successful and then you're seen and all of your mud pit is on display. That's when things got a little bit trickier for me. I did not have an easy time with success. I started getting success pretty quickly. And so I didn't know how to cope with it. Like I didn't have the nervous system for it, and I didn't have the grounding, like the internal and like the structural integrity to withstand public visibility. And so I was just drinking like a bottle of wine every night and turning out scripts. All I did, like I had no social life. I had a boyfriend, but he was sort of like, he was like a child watching a train crash. I was just working nonstop and then spending money on like stupid, frivolous things because I was like uncomfortable because I couldn't be at rest. I like redecorated my apartment like 3 times. My anxiety at so many points was like through the roof. At one point, I had gotten to like a hypochondria stage where I was like convinced that because you come from like crazy house, you're like, well, something's always got to be going wrong. Like at some point, it can't be too good for too long. Like some shoe is gonna drop. And so I got into like this hypochondriac stage where I was like convinced that I had to get in front of some ambiguous illness or something. And at one point I went to like a local clinic being like, I think I have scabies. It was probably like hives. Honestly, it was probably like nervous hives. And the guy was like, okay, well, do you live in squalor? Like he was like asking me. And I was like, I don't think so. I was like, well, I didn't vacuum in a couple. He's like, no, no, no. Like, do you live in pure filth? Like a homeless person? And I was like, no. And he was like, you don't have scabies. And I was like, okay. I called back to the apartment. I was like, take everything out of the bags. I had such bad anxiety. The center could not hold the success at all. I just felt like, I was just doing tons of stupid shit. When you start making money and you don't know how to hold on to it, it goes by pretty quickly. I was buying like I bought a fur coat in Los Angeles. It was like 90 degrees. You just don't know how to like get a grip on yourself. And the more it became this like this horrible cycle of like, the more untethered I felt, the harder I worked to get more control and to get more worth and validation to cover up. What happened was like the more success I got, the more exposed I felt. Because you very quickly start to realize that like you are all of this anxiety and this OCD and this blah, 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 these things that are trying to cover up a giant bed of shame that you're hiding inside. And that's why you are so ambitious. It's why you're working so hard, is because you don't feel like you're good enough at all. And so I wound up in this cyclical, sick cycle of working to overcompensate for how shameful I felt, but then getting visibility and feeling too exposed. And it was like this endless, I didn't know how to step out of it, and get a grip on everything. And then at that time, I was also losing ties from my family. I mean, they were kind of done. I went to therapy because I could finally afford therapy. That was what was very cool about screenwriting. It finally afforded me therapy. And in therapy, you start to learn, like, you're not the problem. Like, I think so much of my ambition was to convince my family and the world, like, I'm good enough. Like, and you want to get these medals and these accolades so you can, like, bring them back to your original home and say, look, I'm good enough. And it's exhausting. And eventually you have a therapist that's like, nah, like, you're not actually the problem. You have a lot of shame inside. And then your career starts to fall apart because you can no longer prop up the false self that you've built to maintain it. And that part gets really hard. Trigger warning. I think of it as like the internal rot. Like, if you worked at Disneyland and you wore a Mickey Mouse costume for 30 years without ever taking it off, if you just fucking stank and were, like, rotting inside. I guess that's like the analogy of what it felt like to be like a performer with, like, a mud pit inside. You're like, I'm great. I'm doing great. And then you're just like, nah, your psyche is like, nah, you're broken, dude. I started writing a bunch of screenplays about, like, Danish serial killers. Like, I was not in a good place. The psyche will take you down. Like, the psyche and the body will co-conspire to pull you down by any means possible, to no longer keep up you can't keep the jig up anymore. Like, the false self will rot off in real time. Doesn't matter how successful you are. It doesn't matter how hard you try. You're going to rot IRL. I was so depressed. I was so done. I was thinking all the bad thoughts. Jim Carrey talks about depression in the best way. He's like, it's the soul saying, I can't keep pretending anymore. And yeah, like, I wanted out by any means necessary. It didn't help I was drinking so much either to, like, quell the anxiety. But I didn't know what was happening. I was like, and everyone was like, you've got all these opportunities, all this stuff is happening for you. You must be so proud of yourself. I had just directed a movie. I was the lowest I've ever been. I was the most depressed I've ever been. And I didn't understand why. I was like, how am I this sad? I have a bookshelf from Restoration Hardware. How am I this miserable? Yeah, I just wanted I wanted to rain check out of there. It's really funny because it's really the screenwriters, we kind of have like a formula. A lot of people follow the hero's journey. It's a story structure. Joseph Campbell is a myth. I don't know. He writes about myth. He's a myth historian. Brilliant man. He writes about the hero's journey. It's like the Christ storyline, that everybody's going to be called on an adventure, and they think that they're going to find some answer outside of them. it's this journey that we all take that leads us to our deepest, darkest wounds. And while most scripts follow this format, like I was following this hero's journey format in all of my screenplays, pretty much. You don't see that it's happening to you. You don't see the same way you fooled yourself. You don't see the way you're struggling at the end of Act 2. That you think that Hollywood is the answer. You think this career and these awards will be the answer to something, and they never are. They just leave you emptier. You don't see how you're killing yourself to make up for love you never got. I was like the hero's gurney. And then, yeah, it's really weird coming out of all of it. I'm okay losing a career that I won't even say I'm losing a career. Like, I don't think Hollywood and I align anymore. Or maybe I'm like meant for a different purpose. Like, I think creativity finds us at different stages in our life in different ways and in different forms. And we have to honor the way creativity wants to come through us, and it wants to dance with us, and it wants to work with us, especially if you're like in a creative field. You don't really get to say. I just know that if something is like, that if I'm really forcing something now, like put it down and walk away. You're not doing it right. I at least know that. I at least know, like, if you feel the urge to grab a glass of wine to get through the day, it's probably not the best for you. And I also know that, like, I don't have to prove my worth anymore. I no longer have any interest in proving anything to anyone, which may not be the healthiest. I don't know. Enya lives in a castle with her 9 cats. She has never been married. Man, her wiki page is like a gothic mic drop. Wouldn't you love to go to tea at Enya's castle? Just like go over for lunch? That's like the vibe I'm going for now. Like, and if you can't meet that frequency of ethereally calm, ethereally chill, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want this mask capitalist world. I rebuke it. I'm too. So yeah, losing my ambition. I think ambition is silly. I think ambition's really, because it can just be ambiguous and vague. And this need to accomplish something, but what? I think purpose matters. I think wholeness matters. And if you're striving in the direction of something that really matters to you, then yeah, go for it. Give it your all. But like blind ambition just feels like it just feels like a hit and run these days. I don't know. I could be wrong. My thoughts are my own. And I think for anyone that's like still fueled by screenwriting, like we need that. We need good movies. Like I want that for people. I'm not anti-Hollywood at all. I'm like I could no longer speak that language, but that doesn't mean that it's the same. It's not at all the same for everyone. I think we're going to have really good, weird movies now because there's going to be there has to be like a new Hollywood. Something new will take form and it will be magnificent. And it'll be like the new original Wild West. It's just really funny because if you think about it, like I went to Hollywood with the hopes of being seen and with the hopes of like making it as a writer. And none of that happened via Hollywood. It was only through life coming at me and unraveling and the coming apart that happens with experience and with life and with true soul trials and tribulations that I got my wish. So you get what you wish for, but it might not be in the package you asked for it in. But yeah, navigating my time in Hollywood was my own hero's journey. And I can say I'm grateful for that. I can say I'm grateful to have walked away from that. But yeah, you guys should get, if you're not Caribbean bluing your nights, I am Caribbean blue every night now because that's like what my nervous system can handle. If you watch the news regularly, you should be Enya-inning in a direct ratio, corresponding ratio. Like you have to balance those scales just for your own sanity, just for your own, you need that sigh of relief, my friend. All right, well, that's all I got this week. I hope that was really, you know what? I'm done proving my worth to you. I know that was enough. It's good enough. It's good enough for me. Thank you so much for stopping by, and take care of yourselves. See you next week. Bye.